Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special episode of Cork and Board, pairing good food with good wine. The first of what I hope to be many special episodes throughout the year, because today we are celebrating Canada Day. It is July 1st when this is being released. We are celebrating Canada's 153rd birthday, and like everyone else when we celebrate a birthday, we are baking a cake. Now I'm going to be taking a little bit of a spin on angel food cake and making a maple angel food cake. And to go with that, being a very sweet dessert, we need a dessert wine. And what better dessert wine to celebrate Canada Day than a Niagara Peninsula ice wine. This is a specialty of the region that is made by harvesting the grapes and crushing them when they are frozen solid in the dead of winter, and gives a very concentrated, very sweet wine. This one is said to have notes of peach and honey in it, which seems to be a rather common occurrence for dessert wines, but that means it's something I'm probably going to enjoy. I'm looking forward to this, but moving on, we've got a lot to do with this cake. There are ingredients that need to be left or brought up to room temperature. There's dry ingredients to be prepped. There's wet ingredients to be prepped, and all of that needs to be done before everything gets mixed together and put into the oven. So without further ado, let's dive in. So one of the first things that I need to do to get started on this is get the egg whites up to temperature. Now for an angel food cake, everything's light, it's very airy, and it owes that airiness to having no fat in there. So store-bought egg whites are actually the best way to go forward with this, but we need a lot of them for a full recipe, and it comes out to about 2¼ cups. So what we're going to do is we're just going to get this all started and get this up to temperature. But there's a lot of egg whites that we need for this. We're just going to measure everything out, get it into our material. And there we are, 2¼ cups of egg whites. We now need to just leave that aside and get it to sit while we prep the rest of our ingredients. Onto the dry stuff. So we start by actually refining all of our sugars. We're going to take that, put it into a food processor, and get it moving until it's woven down into a slightly finer grain. Sift 1 cup of flour. Now, normally you should use cake flour, but I don't have any on hand, so we're going to make our own. So cake flour, adding in our sugar, followed by our salt, 1/4 teaspoon, and a teaspoon of baking powder. Sift all that and then give it multiple sifts to make sure everything is homogeneous and well mixed. Now with our ingredients done, it's time to do our wet ingredients. Take our now room temperature egg whites, 1.5 teaspoons of cream of tartar, 1/2 cup of water, 1/4 cup of amaretto, and 1/3 cup of maple syrup. A teaspoon of vanilla, and we're going to start by hand whisking all this together until it's nice and foamy before moving over to a machine mixer. Using your mixer, you want to keep going until everything is nice, frothy, and medium peaks form. Now at this point, we want to take our dry mixture ingredients and sift them over our beaten egg whites, and bit by bit, and fold each section in with a spatula. Repeat this process until you're through all of the flour before moving on to greasing up your cake pans. Now I'm not sure I have a cake pan that's the right size, so I'm going with 2 smaller ones, because reportedly the more you do this with angel food cake and the bigger the dish, the more likely it is to collapse in the middle. The sides are kind of important. Grease and flour them up, and then fill them up about 2/3 of the way. You sort of want to dollop in your material so that it does not lose any of those bubbles. You want to preserve as much of that air pocket as possible. With all of that done, you just want to give them a quick shake to even them out before popping them into the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 35 minutes. Now these collapse in on themselves a lot. The cake pans were a little bit big, and you test them just with a toothpick before placing them upside down over a rack to dry for at least an hour. Now I could just let these sit for an hour and call it a day and have a dessert that would probably be quite good, but this is Cork and Board. We're not going to stop quite there, so put on your fancy pants and buckle up, people, because we're going to get started on something to top onto these cakes. And I'm thinking of a pecan and candied apple topping. So stick around, we're going to get right into that and then have this for a wonderful dessert. Now this is a really simple cake topping. It's going to be a bit more rustic, but all we're going to do is take an apple and cut it into large chunks. before taking a bunch of pecans, roughly equal quantity, and doing the exact same. Now these are some pre-roasted pecans that I'd made earlier in the month, and they are perfectly good and ready to go. With our major components ready, it's time to make our candying and caramelizing sauce, starting with butter, adding in brown sugar, and then adding in a dash of maple syrup. Now these are all ingredients you can do to taste on your own. Get the temperature going and melt all of these together before adding in our dry ingredients. Mix them around, add a little bit of cinnamon, and then leave them to stew and candy and let the liquid from those apples come out and simmer down a bit. With all of that done, it is now time to plate. Take these onto our cake, add them in, and transfer everything to a cutting board before cutting yourself a slice. With that done, it is now time to cork our wine, chilled as always, and plate for serving. Alright, the cake is baked, the wine is poured. Happy Canada Day, everyone. Let's have that first impression. It's sweet, it's got a little bit of the syrupiness. I'm reminded of the Sauterne, but it's not at that level. It's heavier than that. The Vidal grape has got a fruitier aspect, it's not as acidic, and so the sweetness is really coming front and forward. But that being said, it's still very well balanced. You've got a good atmosphere in the wine. There's a wonderful fruity flavor that I would put it more on the lines of a sweet apple instead of a peach, but that's just my take on this. Still, a very sweet wine, but should go well with the sweetness of the dessert to balance that out. Let's have a piece of that cake. Still fairly light and airy. You saw in the footage that the cake had collapsed in on itself. It was not quite nearly the volume I was hoping for. I think that might have to do with some of the liquid elements working against me. I'll have to tweak the recipe a little bit. But still, it's very light for a cake nonetheless, and very flavorful. You've got just a hint of that maple syrup. You've got the amaretto coming through very nicely. And the material it's not overpowering. It's not sickly sweet. But that being said, let's see how it affects the ice wine. Interesting. The sweetness of the ice wine has come front and center. It's very apparent, but the fruitiness is right up there with it, and if anything, it's even more so. So what you end up with is this wine that it's going to improve the dish. We've got a little bit of fruit element in here with the nuts and the apple and the maple flavoring. And that's all being accentuated by the finish, the fruity finish of this ice wine. I'm actually kind of enjoying this. I think I'm going to have a nice lengthy dessert this evening. But that is it for us today. This is our Canada Day special. Thank you all so much for coming along. To my American viewers, don't you worry. We've got our 4th of July special coming up in just a couple of days, and we will see you then. Do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel to see more videos. Take care, everyone. We'll see you in a couple of days for our next special episode. Take care.